Just so you know, today what we're going to be going over is the future of telehealth. We have these three wonderful presenters with us, and they're kind of focused on the speech language pathology side of telehealth, but a lot of the trends that we'll be discussing will apply to all forms of telehealth. And just a reminder to everybody who's joined, this is a webinar that will be recorded. So we are recording this webinar and we will send it a recording in the follow-up, and we will also be posting it to YouTube. All right, well, let's get this party started. For all of you who are here, thank you so much for coming. This is going to be a really informative and interesting session about the future of telehealth. Our speakers today are Elizabeth Cronkrite, the Distance Education Clinic Director at Calvin University, who is training up the next generation of telehealth professionals. We have Kellie Paul, the Director of Strategy from Coviu, and Stacy Crouse, who is a Boom Publisher and Resource Creator and an SLP. So before we get started, one of the main reasons we kind of wanted to introduce this topic is because changes are happening really fast in the field of telehealth. And here I'm sharing my screen with Boom Live, which is a new feature that we currently have in beta for the Boom Learning platform. And that's something that allows you to control client access and permissions over digital stimuli, which includes, you can see on the screen here, the mouse control, whether they can click, whether they can type, whether they can navigate to the next slide. As a practitioner, you're able to see your client's mouse movements, so you can see where their first click is and where their 50th click is, and it's perfect for teleassessments and teletherapy. So that's going to be rolling out to all Boom Learning users soon. And this is just one example of the type of innovation that's coming very quickly in this field as telehealth continues beyond the pandemic into, the future state, what it's going to be for the next 5 to 10 years. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand it off first to Elizabeth, who's going to talk about some of the current studies and trends in the field.
Thank you, Carlisa. I'm Elizabeth Cronkrite. Like she said, I'm a speech pathologist and the Distance Education Clinic Director at Calvin University. I'm going to talk to you today about some trends that we're seeing in telepractice. But before we dive into that, a little bit about our program here at Calvin. We are a private Christian university in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We have a fairly robust master's program in speech pathology with about 200 students across 36 states, which you can see here highlighted in yellow. We have an on-campus and a distance education mode of our program. And that distance mode, our students participate in telepractice for 2 full semesters. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we're seeing here on campus, and as well as the larger trends that we're seeing in telepractice. Go ahead. So first, let's talk about telehealth use. In the height of the pandemic, we know that telehealth really exploded, and there's some data from the second half of 2020 saying about 30% of all health center visits were being done virtually at that time. Now, this information comes from the Household Pulse Survey, which is administered by the Census Bureau and looked from April of 2021 to August of 2022. And they found that about 22% of adults surveyed had used telehealth in the past 4 weeks, and about 18% of children in their households had used telepractice as well. So we can see that the numbers are trending down, but they're fairly steady, and telepractice is something that is going to continue. Some demographic factors that they found in this survey that I thought were interesting were that Hispanic or Latino, Black, or people who reported 2 or more races were more likely to use telehealth than those who reported that they were white or non-Latino. Telehealth use was the highest among those who had the lowest level of income. And respondents who reported they had Medicare, Medicaid, or quote unquote other insurance were more likely to use telehealth than those who had private insurance. And I think this information really speaks to equitable access to care, which I'll talk about again in a few moments. Next slide, please. The first trend that we're seeing in telepractice is this huge explosion of the research on outcomes. So some of this research started pre-pandemic, but has really grown in the past few years. Things that researchers are looking at are, one, is telepractice an effective mode of treatment? Can we do the things that we want to do? Or is it comparable to in-person services? So they look at things like evaluation and treatment, caregiver satisfaction, and access and participation, just to name a few. And overwhelmingly, the answer to all of these questions is yes, which is really exciting. Some studies that I picked out of the past 2 years looked at things like autism, traumatic brain injury, dementia, AAC, neurogenic dysphagia, hearing loss, and aphasia, just to name a few. I think some of those diagnoses are surprising. Maybe we didn't expect that someone with autism or dementia could participate in telepractice, but the research is suggesting that it can be effective. One study looking at neurogenic dysphagia found high levels of agreement between in-person and virtual assessments, regardless of the severity and the etiology. So I thought that was very cool that even something so medical and scientific can be done in this type of platform. Looking at satisfaction, many research has found high levels of client, caregiver, and parent satisfaction. Some studies working with children with autism and their parents actually reported higher levels of treatment satisfaction, knowledge, and self-efficacy than compared to in-person services. I think it's pretty widely accepted that access is better or is improved in telehealth because it reduces barriers of travel and location. But it's not just for clients. There was a study looking at patients with dementia, and their caregivers were able to log into sessions from other locations. So they're able to participate too, which is really great. And then an early intervention study by Malaleke in 2021 found that 89% of caregivers reported telepractice was a better alternative than having to travel somewhere. And they found that there was a total increase in number of visits because there were fewer cancellations in this mode of service delivery. Next slide. So all of this outcomes data really leads into our next trend, which is that clinicians are accepting that this is a viable method of service delivery. We can have all the information we want about how great it is, but if the clinicians aren't on board, it's not going to happen. So a study by Douglas and colleagues in 2023 looked at clinician perspectives of telepractice pre-pandemic and found that the biggest factor of whether a clinician had reservations or not was if they had experience. So we've all lived through a pandemic. Most of us have experience now. Honestly, not all of that experience was good, but it was all learning experience, where I believe many clinicians have come to realize that this really is a customizable mode of service delivery. You can meet the client where they are, both literally and figuratively. You can use the fact that they're at home to your advantage. You can be very flexible with your sessions, both in scheduling. As a clinician, being able to work from home can be helpful to home life balance. We're able to establish therapeutic relationships and, like I said, work with clients that maybe we didn't think would be successful. There's a lot more training and education available talking about how to do telepractice and more systematic and organizational supports. We learned a lot during COVID about what doesn't work, and a lot of those things have led to these really positive changes. Doing telepractice has reduced SLP shortages, which always feels great as a clinician. And the availability of really quality digital materials and resources like Boom Learning also helps clinicians be on board with this type of service delivery. Next slide, please. If we look more widely at systematic acceptance, we can see that the healthcare field is overwhelmingly in support of expanding telepractice. So we see this in reimbursement when Medicare has expanded coverage through the end of next year, and there's ongoing advocacy to continue expanding that coverage. Medicaid and commercial insurances have broad flexibility about what they will and won't cover, but most cover some form of telepractice. And many states have actually passed laws that insurance, whatever they cover in person, they also have to cover when it's delivered via telepractice as well. This quote from the American Medical Association comes from their Recovery Plan for America. And again, just really highlights how important telehealth and virtual services are to address longstanding health inequities that really came to light during the COVID pandemic. Next slide. The last trend in telepractice that we're seeing, and the one that I'm most excited about, is how we're preparing and training clinicians for the future. There was a study out of Eastern Kentucky University where they had second-year speech graduate students, and they split them into in-person and telehealth groups, and then looked at their perspectives. So what they found really is a lot of what we're seeing here at Calvin too, but the way that student clinicians are engaging in telepractice is different from how they engage in in-person clinical experiences. One is they're very intentional about the therapeutic process. They're thinking more about how to deliver effective therapy, not just what are we going to do in a session, but how am I going to move between targets and how am I going to effectively deliver this service. They're very client-centered. They're spending much more time making client-specific materials. They're using the fact that the client is at home to their advantage. And they're talking more with the client about therapy treatment and targets and how the session should flow today and what things to work on. They're just really focused on making that very person-specific. These clinicians are super flexible. They are able to adapt treatment activities in the moment versus an in-person clinician tends to grab a new material off the shelf. Our telepractice clinicians are more flexible in trying to make the activity work for the client. And there's also always technological problems. It's inevitable. And so these student clinicians are able to manage those and deal with those without it throwing off their whole session and still being able to be productive and effective. And then lastly, these students are really solution focused. When it comes to things like behavior management, technology management, they were more focused on how to move forward versus how it's disrupting their session, which is a really great skill for these clinicians to have. Next slide, please. And then lastly, when we hear from our graduate students, these are a couple of them here at Calvin, they really enjoy telepractice. It's something that they tend to be really nervous about initially, but end up liking quite a bit. They're really engaged in self-assessment. I have so many students that watch their sessions back, not only to get client data, but to review their own performance, which is something I never did in grad school, but I'm so glad that they're doing that. It just shows this level of self-awareness that is really great to have. They're reporting better school life balance, just like the clinicians reported better home life balance when they're able to work from home some. And then most importantly, they're developing really important clinical knowledge and skill. Like we said, telehealth and telepractice is not going anywhere. So these students are going to be able to deliver effective treatment across various modes of service delivery, which is really exciting. Back to you, Carlisa.
Sorry, I was muted there. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing with us kind of the academic perspective of where we stand in telehealth right now and some opportunities. Next up, we're going to hear from Kellie Paul, but before we switch over to her, I just also wanted to say that a lot of the studies that Elizabeth referenced are going to be included at the end of this presentation. So you'll have a chance to potentially screenshot that. I think we'll send the deck as well in a follow-up email so that you'll have those references.
Also, I will say that ASHA's practice portal, their telepractice or telehealth practice portal, has so many good references and research articles. If you're looking for a specific diagnosis or anything, I would recommend checking that out.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And now I'll hand it over to Kellie.
Thank you, Carlisa. Thank you, Elizabeth. I absolutely love your statistics. So amazing. My name is Kellie Paul. I am an SLP by trade, and I have worked 13 years on the ground and 10 years in teletherapy. So please don't do that math because it comes up really old. But I am the Director of Strategy and Growth at Coviu Global, and Coviu is a teletherapy platform. We have 90,000 providers worldwide and have completed 9 million sessions. It's HIPAA and FERPA compliant, and we have strong partnerships with Pearson and Boom, which we're really proud of. But what I like everyone to think about for the Coviu platform is it's designed for everyone. It's here for that individual clinician that wants to have their own contract and work directly with the school or with students. It's also here for the school district or that clinic that wants to have hybrid services or move all of their clinicians to one platform. And it's also here for the staffing agency that wants to staff their providers on a platform that they can use with their school. And we're very proud that it is reasonably priced. And you can find out pricing is on our platform as well as other material at coviu.com. But I also want to shout out that we started in Australia and have only been in America for about a year, but our focus in America is on the special education, the student and child market. So that's where we put all of our focus. So let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, we've talked about this. Elizabeth already gave mention to it, but technology, man, it is changing and advancing at light speed. And have we not seen huge advances since the pandemic, which is really, really great for all of us. And for those of you that maybe had to jump to teletherapy overnight or with a week's notice during the pandemic and had to jump on Zoom and Google Meets and had never done this before, and good job for you. Congratulations. We are all super proud of you. But this is not what that is. Teletherapy does not need to feel that way. For those of you that have said, I'm never going back to that. There's a lot of wonderful resources for you now, post-COVID, even more than there were before. Materials, everything has been built out so well to make services in teletherapy as strong as if you're on the ground. So really want everyone to think about this. Teletherapy is not going anywhere, just as Elizabeth mentioned. And we all need to open our eyes to different options for ourselves. Equally exciting, I think, is for providers working on the ground. There's amazing materials for you that can be used, you know, within your classroom with your students sitting side by side, but also using digital materials. So it's really important that you think about what you need, what your students need, and really work from there. So let's go to the next slide, please. This is just just an example of great progress in teletherapy and technology, but this is from the Coviu platform. Like I said, we have a strong relationship with Pearson, put a lot of time into developing this and making sure that the measures that we have are valid and that we are getting reliable assessments from providers. But we have a full battery for our psychologists and our SLPs to use. A few things I want to shout out that I think are really great for us as teleclinicians to being comfortable giving teletherapy assessments are first, within our platform, the assessment is there. It is integrated. You're not having somebody click on a link or join you at a link to get to your assessment. It is right there when you turn your platform on. The prompts are there, the stimulus material, the basal, the ceiling rules. It's all right there on your screen. So you're not having to look down at your protocol or look to the side at your second monitor. Everything is right there for you. The other piece that we put a lot of time into is making sure that the students are attentive and not being distracted or not giving us their best testing scenario when you may not be sitting there right next to them. So ways we've achieved this are we have notifications if your kiddo leaves the browser, leaves the assessment screen, you're going to be notified. You're going to know right away that you need to be checking in on them or seeing what's happening, and redirecting them. The other piece is the camera. The student's camera, those first-time kiddos that are taking their assessment, maybe the first time in teletherapy experience, they like to look at themselves. They like to make silly faces. So oftentimes cameras are turned off, and they are either turned off or you have that grayed out vision of a person, and then kids love to click on that to try to turn it back on. I've seen paraprofessionals do their own hack where they're putting sticky notes over the camera. All good ideas, but also create some distraction for kiddos. So what we have done within our platform is you have once you open your stimulus materials, the kiddo's picture goes completely away, vanishes. It's a white background like they were never there. So the student sees the provider and the stimulus material. The provider can still see the student. So you're able to still watch them and see everything. They just can't ever see themselves. And it's like their camera was never even a possibility. But one more thing here, in my favorite, is we have numerated clicks. So if you're given an assessment and you say, click on the apple, the student clicks on their apple. On their side, they see a poof and they see where they clicked, and then it goes away. On the provider side, they see that same circle, it stays, but it has a 1 in it. Or if it's a sequencing item, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're able to see that information. And if you were to turn the page, it's clean again. You don't have to do anything to erase, but if you go back, it's still there. You have that those clicks recorded so that you can get back to them. Also, for your click happy kiddos, you're going to see all 1,600 of their clicks, but you're going to find that number 1 because that's the most important for you right then. Okay, let's go on. Let's hit the next slide because this is our big excitement right now for certain, but we have a partnership with Boom Learning. This was something that clinicians were asking for. They wanted to be able to use their Boom cards. They wanted to be able to have all the access of using Boom, but in a really easy way when they're in teletherapy. So you can see where that beautiful arrow is that Kari Lisa put on there for me, and that moves, and I love it. It says open Boom cards, and that is within our platform. So you click on that button and it takes you directly to your Boom account. At that time, your kiddo is there. Your kiddo is seeing the same thing you are. You are sharing the mouse. It's the same mouse. You're on the same screen. You hear the same audio. You're working on the same game at the same time. You're doing the same activity at the same time. So it's fully integrated for a seamless therapy interaction. So super proud of that. Really, really appreciative of all the clinicians that gave input and for Boom's endless hours of talking with us and putting this together with us. So really exciting on that regard. Okay, next slide, please. Last piece on the Coviu platform, but really customizable. Lots of abilities for you to put in your own preferences, your own configurations, backgrounds, colors, camera views. And what I like to think of it as is just like my phone has its own apps, your phone has your own apps, nobody's is going to look the same. And that's kind of how the platforms run as well. You're able to, set it up so you have the things that you like the most and use the most really ready at your fingertips, so that you can use and have the best session possible. So certainly these are all advances in technology that we've seen on our platform, but they're everywhere. And this is what's so exciting with these rapid changes in technology. It's just really important that we're all taking the time to identify those needs of ourselves and our students and make the right decision for us as professionals. So, okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this one is, I feel like, a scary topic for a lot of people, but it is everywhere every day. I don't think you can read anything without talking about artificial intelligence. So kids are excited about it. Kids love ChatGPT and think that's everything. Adults are a little more nervous. How is this going to work? What's our job going to look like? Is this really going to affect us? And it's coming our way, and it's going to affect us well. So I took my little time, and I'm telling you, it took me about 1 second to type "what is AI" into ChatGPT, and this is the answer it gave me. Refers to the development of computer systems and algorithms that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence, such as problem solving, learning, and decision making. So in my simple terms, that means that a computer is going to help me do my work better. And that's really exciting. And it is coming our way. It is going to affect all of our work, and it's really going to help us. And so I can tell you in all disciplines, all of our related services, there are AI studies happening left and right. I do want to point out 3 that are speech related because that's kind of the path I went down. But just to give you an idea of what's out there right now, there's one called Project Euphonia. And this is looking at speech recognition with adults in degenerative diseases and what we can do to help them prolong their speech and follow those patterns of their difficulties. Next is at University of Michigan, looking at speech disfluency and cognitive function. So another one that if you are working with a fluency child, it's going to be a huge impact on your work. And this is a biggie that I think we're going to be hearing about for quite a long time, but it's a 5-year, $20 million grant. 9 universities are working on it. It's based out of the University of Buffalo, and it is looking at how to help SLPs lighten their load. They are looking at using AI for universal screenings, tools for progress monitoring, material prep, intervention planning. And they are going to be creating the AI Institute for Exceptional Education, which is going to be a benefit to all of us. So this is just let's get ready for it. Let's be thinking about it. AI is coming our way. We want to use this to ensure our students' success. It is going to improve our interactions and personalize the learning of our kids. But it's our job right now to be doing our own research, take a class if you get the opportunity, and start to get comfortable and think about how you will use it yourself. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So within our trends, we definitely have our technology trends. We also have trends within our community. And when I say community, I mean our world, because I feel like since COVID, and I'm going to say thank you to COVID for this, because I think it's made our world smaller. And it's given us opportunities to use technology different, to connect differently, and to be able to grow as a community as a whole. And so when I think of all of our disciplines and the opportunities out there, right now we have great abilities via Facebook or chat groups or Instagram or whatever, where you can communicate with a clinician that you would never have met elsewhere, that you will never probably physically cross paths with, but you can collaborate on ideas. I love on the Facebook channels where I say, I have a kiddo that has this and this and scored this, what would you do? And somebody gets 25 answers and they're able to really think through and collaborate at a bigger level. This is something great. We also, as Elizabeth was mentioning, lots more research. Teletherapy is here to stay, and the research is allowing us to be stronger at what we're doing. Working abroad definitely was something that was possible beforehand, but it's just people have a bigger interest, I think, right now in traveling. You can live in Italy and work in Kansas. It's possible. So these are great things. Definitely more materials. Like I said, look at Boom and how much their platform has increased in the materials that are out there for us to use. And also just individual providers putting things out there on their own. There's a lot of options for us, but definitely we're going to have more remote societies. We're going to continue in teletherapy. It is not going away. We have a lot of shortages right now. We all know that. We feel that on a daily basis. Teletherapy is helping to bridge that gap. So that's something that we definitely need to have a little chat on here on our next slide. Are those shortages and what is happening and what's out there. This compact is the ASHA compact, the interstate compact that is for SLPs and audiologists. Related fields also have compacts in process in different degrees. But want you to know that those states that are listed in blue, 29, hope to have some form of the interstate compact in effect in 2024. What is this going to do? This means that if you live in Georgia, you might be able to use that Georgia license to practice in Idaho. It's really going to increase our continuity of care. It's going to reduce the barriers, and it is certainly going to increase telehealth. It's going to allow us to have great opportunities. It is wonderful for folks that are military and moving around quite a bit to have better work options. So if your state is not in blue, And if it is, I encourage you to be advocating for your state and to be watching progress. This is, you can get information on the ASHA website. There's also a direct link to the website, aslpcompact.com. I'll write that in the chat in a moment, that you can get more information on. And I need to definitely say that you as a clinician are responsible for the regulations state to state. Georgia may have different regulations than Idaho, so you need to know that as a clinician that's working in that area. So for me, before I sign off from you, I would love to meet each of you. I would love to connect via LinkedIn. I want to brainstorm with you on how you can be successful, how your school can be successful, how you can use teletherapy to help your kiddos. So please message me and I would be happy to have time with you. So thank you for joining, and I'm sending it back to Kari Lisa.
Okay, thanks so much. That was really informative. And I know that, I'm not sure if Yanni shared it yet, but we're going to share a link in the chat to Mary, our CEO's presentation on AI, because she did share a lot of her legal perspective as a lawyer on what the opportunities and risks are associated with AI for both educators and telehealth providers. So that's kind of an interesting additional resource for anyone who's really interested in AI. I noticed that there are a lot of raised hands and questions. We're going to get to the Q&A at the end, so please add your questions to the Q&A box. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stacy, who's going to talk more about creating resources for telehealth.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Stacy Crouse. I've been an SLP since 2008.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
I began providing teletherapy in 2014. I eased in very slowly at first, and then I went all in because I just loved it. I received my listening and spoken language certification in 2017. So in addition to teletherapy, my passion is helping children with hearing loss who utilize hearing technology to listen and talk. And then in that same year, 2017, I began blogging about and creating my own digital therapy materials for teletherapy, which included opening a Boom store in 2018. Next slide, please. So what are Boom cards? This is something I used to have to explain a lot pre-COVID, and then a lot of people caught up very quickly with Boom cards. But I first heard about Boom from an SLP colleague, and I thought, digital deck of cards, it just wasn't making sense. So if you haven't heard of Boom cards, let's show a little bit about what they are and what they can do. So Boom cards are digital decks of cards that are available for purchase or for free on the Boom Learning app or website. Activities and Boom cards can target anything. In the speech therapy world, that's still a lot of things like articulation and language, life skills, social skills, fluency. And being digital and technology based is one reason they are very motivating for students. Next slide, please. Boom cards are also interactive. So when people think of a student using a screen, they might just think of them watching something. That is not the case at all for Boom cards. Initially, Boom cards were designed to be like digital task cards that a teacher might use, but through the creativity of Boom card authors and the developers, they are now highly dynamic activities that include things like movable pieces and fillable text boxes, playable sounds and audio clips, a new drawing feature where you can draw right on the Boom cards, pushable buttons, and even some short embedded videos that are right there in the Boom card itself. And I'm going to show you guys some of those in just a minute, some of those features. Okay, next slide. And additionally, Boom cards have immediate feedback. So that's another motivating feature about Boom cards is that they can provide visual feedback, including a circle around the correct answer, switching to the next card in some cases, in addition to auditory feedback. So if you know the sounds, the ding or the whoops sound that they make to provide that auditory feedback. There is a new feature that makes it possible for students to record themselves in a voice memo and replay their response to provide that self feedback, which is awesome for speech therapy, of course. And I will show that here in a minute as well. And next slide. And the Boom cards are self-grading. So within the Boom platform on the website, a teacher or a therapist can assign decks to individual students or groups of students or whole classes for them to do those decks inside of sessions or class or outside on their own for homework. And you can, because they've been assigned to individual students, their progress and their performance on those decks can be tracked in the platform and accessed by the teacher or the therapist at any time, which is great for progress monitoring and homework assignments as well. Okay, so next slide. This is just a demo of some of the features that I just talked about. So there's fillable text boxes. There's a clickable button example. There's a voice memo feature right there on the right-hand side where a student can record themselves and then play it back. And that's a semi-new feature as well. And then this next one is also brand new. It's a beta feature right now, but it is drawing, or it's the ink feature. So you can draw right on the Boom card, different colors. There's different line thicknesses. So just when we thought Boom couldn't make anything more interactive, they did. So I love that new feature. All right, next slide, please. Okay, now turning to determining therapy setting. So lots of factors go into determining the therapy setting for speech therapy or OT or whatever it is when you're looking at in-person versus teletherapy. So first, the school or the clinic's staffing and support has to be a consideration. So administrators may look at teletherapy due to a shortage of service providers caused by either a remote location or the need to cover a leave, a medical or maternity leave. But there may also be a desire to support the current therapist to decrease their caseloads for SLPs that have high caseloads. What? Oh my gosh, no way. And also to prevent burnout of those therapists and reduce the hiring, rehiring cycle. Oh, yes. Lisa just put a fast play link in the chat that you guys can try out that deck that I just showed for, I think, 14 days. You can use that deck anytime. That link should work for the next 14 days. Okay, so there also, the student and the school environment must be considered when determining the setting for therapy. So for example, teletherapy is often the logical choice for a virtual school. I've worked in several virtual schools. It fits in very nicely with their model. But you might also be looking to decrease the interruptions of therapy due to things like weather or building closures for other reasons other than weather. So teletherapy might be a nice option then. But a brick and mortar school might also just not have the physical space, the dedicated therapy space to have a therapy room, but they have a small a small area with a computer that can be used. So that's another time when teletherapy might be a great option. And then, like everything, there needs to be a consideration of individual student needs. So there are temporary situations like absences due to an occasional illness or when a student might need to travel for an appointment or something. Or there might be more ongoing needs, like for high risk or homebound students, students that might not have reliable transportation, or those students that might benefit from a specialist provider that's not present in the immediate area. They can utilize teletherapy to access that professional. Also, some districts or clinics utilize teletherapy because they're aiming to integrate technology purposefully. They want to utilize technology with their students because there are a slew of reasons to incorporate technology meaningfully. Students are engaged in technology, but it's also an educational strategy that is evidence-based and allows students to learn how to use technology to acquire what they need and acquire information, which is an important job and life skill for the future. And then last but not least, there needs to be thought put into the parent and caregiver involvement when considering a service delivery model. So in many situations, teletherapy provides a unique opportunity to increase that involvement with parents and caregivers. Teletherapy nicely facilitates coaching and supporting students in their daily lives and their regular everyday routines, which can be used to help parents and the students carry over and generalize those skills, which is obviously key to success. If a parent can't get to the school to ever drop in on their kid's speech therapy session, maybe they can drop in on the platform and watch for a little bit and get a whole lot out of that that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Okay, next slide. Okay, of course, telepractice is a service modality that comes with its fair share of opportunities and challenges. I will say that the ever evolving technology and awareness of telepractice has changed immensely in the 10 years I've been doing it, but there are still challenges present. Some of these have been touched on already, but licensure compliance for SLPs and other therapists is a big one. So knowing the rules and the legalities around making sure SLPs hold their applicable state and national licenses, sometimes a teaching certificate, when providing therapy outside their state or their country is a big challenge. And then, of course, no one is surprised that technology can be an obstacle. This includes not just setting up the technology, but navigating that technology equipment, tech issues, obviously, consistent high-speed access or high-speed internet access, a presence of a lag time can occur. Incorporating technology with other areas is one I don't think I thought of until I was like in it. And I realized like AAC devices and cochlear implants, how that all fits together. And then just sometimes a poor acoustic signal for, articulation therapy and things like that. Also managing the physical distance so that it doesn't result in a disconnect with the students and their families. So therapists really need to think outside the box, finding new ways to keep therapy interactive, building the rapport and building that personal connection, also managing behaviors. Um, there can be some logistical problems because of the physical distance. Administering evaluations is one, but Kellie is blowing my mind with the built-in evaluations to the platform. So like I said, a lot of these challenges have come a long way. Another one would be maintaining open collaboration with parents and staff when you aren't physically seeing them. You're not passing them in the hallway for a quick chat. So being an extra good communicator comes in very handy for teletherapy. And then it can be a challenge just to overcome the doubt and be accepted and respected by all involved parties. I've had instances where a parent, a student, an administrator, support staff, other teachers are not super open to teletherapy. They may have had a bad experience or no experience. Pre-pandemic, it was especially evident that this was a very new thing, and there was people that were like not happy about their school getting teletherapy. So that can be a challenge as well. Despite these obstacles, there are many amazing opportunities for telepractice. So telepractice offers convenience for both therapists and students through flexible scheduling. So you're not bound by traditional office hours. And then on a related note, teletherapy makes services more accessible, as Elizabeth said, since geographic location is not a factor in the cases of very remote areas or unreliable transportation, medical needs, weather, or the needs for a specialized treatment. Telepractice is efficient in more ways than one. So obviously there's no travel time needed, even within one school. An SLP is not running up and down the hallway all day trying to find kids. But also within the sessions, there just seems to be an ability to cover more in less time, shorter transitions, not putting away a bunch of materials, getting a bunch out. It's just click, closed, click, open with the next thing. Logistically, there is less overhead expenses involved in teletherapy. So rent, utilities, office supplies, janitorial expenses. I would argue the actual therapy activities and materials themselves result in a cost savings. Telepractice facilitates technology being integrated meaningfully, which I kind of mentioned a bit ago, which prepares students for their future educational experiences and their future jobs. And lastly, the service delivery model facilitates parent and caregiver involvement, which can truly have an impact on student progress. So lots of things are looking up for teletherapy. And that's all I have.
So on that note, we're going to hand it over to Q&A. I know we already have a bunch of questions in the Q&A box, but please feel free to add additional questions. We'll try to tackle them all. I know one of the first ones I saw was for Kellie, and it was about those assessments, wondering if they are available in other languages, such as French.
Yeah, I saw that one too. Right now, I don't have them in French. We have the Self and Golden Fristo on their way very soon in Spanish, but I would like to talk. If that person wants to message me, I have some ideas for you. So I think we could make something work.
And as far as Boom cards, we do have a ton of Boom materials available in French. I think right now we have the site partially, the platform itself partially translated, but there's definitely a range of different materials. We have over 500,000 activities. So some of those are in different languages as well. The next question, does Coviu support green screens like Zoom?
Yes, green screens, and we do have the ability, it actually is coming out next week, where you can upload just your own personal virtual background. So you have choice to change that. A lot of providers, I've seen the most adorable things where they're changing providers to a farm scene and a zoo scene, and they've got, here and here. And so you will be able to do that here in about 4 days.
Neat. Okay. Then we have a question that's more about Boom. It's for somebody who's just getting started as an SLP, wanting to know where to begin with Boom materials in the environment. And maybe I'll give an answer, and then Stacy can give an answer as well, because we both might have perspectives on this. So one area where you could start is creating a free account and then shopping the Boom marketplace for materials that are made by licensed SLPs. And so you can use our filter on search to filter down, so you're just looking at speech language pathology materials, or if your telehealth specialty is different, you could be just looking for occupational therapy materials or just behavioral health materials. And so you can search based on, especially if you have an individual client who has a specific interest, like, okay, I'm working with a stroke recovery patient who is really interested in horses. You might be able to search that interest and then filter by the subject area that you're looking for to find the perfect thing for the right person. And then eventually you can expand to building your own materials using our studio, with the ease of like a presentation deck kind of. That's the back end is maybe a little bit more complicated than that, but you can start creating your own customized materials for exactly what your clients need. And then also we would encourage you to take a look at the reporting, which can be really helpful, depending on what your goals are for assessment. I know that they can be really, really helpful for different kinds of assessments. So take a look at how the reporting is structured. That would be a next step maybe. So I'll hand it over to Stacy to give advice on where to get started. One more thing, sorry.
You're fine.
Also, we have a Facebook group that's just for specialists. So it's like SLPs, OTs, behavioral therapists, that type of thing, special education. So joining that Facebook group can be a great resource to chat through your Boom platform experience with other people in the same fields.
Yes, and along kind of with that, the YouTube channel is how I learned everything pretty much back in 2018, as learning how to mostly create Boom cards, but also just kind of learn the site. Um, I would say just what Carlisa said, searching and filtering to find what you need. Just trying a few just free decks, if nothing else, just to kind of get a feel for the different features, and kind of what is going to work well with your telepractice caseload. The new Boom Live feature is really awesome because your student can be obviously remote working far from you and you're on your screen, but you're both like working within the same Boom deck, which is a very nice alternative to screen share, which is what we've usually just done in teletherapy, which has some limitations depending on the computer, like Chromebooks. Things can impact what the student is able to do. So just kind of playing around with it for a little bit to see kind of what with your students' ages and with their goals and with their technology and equipment, kind of what is working, and then you can kind of hone in on decks that have some of those things that you find work well.
One other thing I'd mention is that any speech language pathologist should definitely opt into the beta program to start giving Boom Live a try right away. That was a product that was designed with SLPs in mind. So it's relatively easy to opt into that beta program. If you have any questions, you can always email help@boomlearning.com. That product will be available to the general public very soon, but in the meantime, it's an open beta. So anybody who wants to join the beta can. I'm going to skip around the questions a little bit. I want to go next to Anne, who is asking about working with AAC and Boom cards and strategies for engagement. And so if Stacy wants to take a stab at answering that one, feel free. But my answer is to go to Shannon Archer's video from this year's Boom Back to School Symposium, where she basically takes you step by step through using a split screen with AAC and Boom cards. So I'm going to ask Yanni to please share that link to that YouTube video. I think that's a great resource and a really straightforward tutorial on how to combine the two. But Stacy, did you have any?
I missed the first part of the question and I'm trying to find
it. Oh, the question was about AAC.
Okay.
So communication devices and Boom cards.
Yes. So you can I've done it a couple different ways. I've had another, the parent, it was with this individual student and their parent was there and they set up another, I don't know if it's an iPad or some kind of, video. So I could also see there was like a third login. So he logged in, I logged in, and then his iPad logged in. So it was pointing at the device. So I could see his device, what he was pushing and, prompt him and things. I could see what was going on. Also, the parent was there, obviously. So that was very helpful. I've also kind of created what was the subscription? Smarty Symbols, I believe it is. Smarty Symbols has there's a library of tons of different images that you can use, kind of like Board Maker and I created my own very basic communication boards, I guess, in Google Slides because it just was easy for me to move those pieces and create it right there. Add things from the internet, like add Google images for different things right from there. So I've kind of made my own. You could also make it in Boom Learning though, because you have movable pieces. So I've kind of makeshifted my own and also use it, a camera to see their actual device.
I've also seen great Boom cards that publishers have created to teach a student to use their new device. So that's really a great resource as well. If you have somebody that's new to their device, they could, you might be able to find or create resources to help them get in the flow of using it.
Yes, and I've seen a lot in the Boom store. It's not my area of expertise. I've only had a few students, but what I've seen is really awesome what people have created.
So we have another person asking about for an agency or a practice, does each therapist need their own plan, or can you buy for an organization? And you can definitely buy for an organization, and there are organizational discounts. and access to special opportunities when you're registered as an organization. So we would encourage you to reach out to sales@boomlearning.com, and we could get you set up with organizational accounts. Then we have some questions for Kellie at Coviu. So specifically, what are the costs of assessments on Coviu? And I think the best way to answer that might be to give a link to your pricing information.
Yep, I will do that.
That sounds good. And then also we had the question, what is the list of evaluations you discussed that are best used for teletherapy? So that might be a question in part to Kellie and in part to Elizabeth, just talking about evaluations in general and which ones are well adapted to a telehealth context.
Yeah, I don't off the top of my head, don't know specific tests, but I will say that you have to have a virtual license for a test to be able to use it over teletherapy. You cannot use just a regular test that you have the physical book for and show it on your camera due to copyright. So that does create some challenges sometimes. Pearson has a lot of their tests available as virtual assessments. But I will let Kellie fill in some gaps here.
I definitely agree with you. And I would say, I mean, we don't want to be doing the use your easel and flip through with the camera or whatnot. That is not going to be a valid test measure. I agree in the fact that you should only be using something that's already licensed to be used digitally. And so you're going to have to go through a few hoops, finding a platform or finding a assessment service that will give you that. So certainly that's where we feel really good. I definitely, I think Pearson's done a really good job. There's other companies out there, Riverside and, WPS that have some as well. So it's a matter of looking, but those that have been made public have been tested to be valid measures. So that's where you want to look.
Yep, and definitely thinking about informal assessments as well. We have a great wealth of materials that could be used for informal assessments in the Boom Marketplace. So with that, I want to make sure I get to the little extra goodies that you guys added at the end of the presentation. So we're going to pause on questions for a minute just so we can share these case study QR codes, which Kellie provided. You can read up on what the case studies will show you. One is about delivering Pearson assessments remotely. One is Eat, Speak, Learn. And then another one about the success within the Department of Education in Australia. So feel free to snap these. And next, I'm going to show you kind of the bibliography with some of the studies that Elizabeth referenced. So here you go. And we will also send this as a follow-up to you in the email. So don't feel like you have to capture it all now, but these are great resources that can help you understand and learn more details about some of the studies that she mentioned. So with that, I'd like to thank you all so much for coming. Thanks again to all the presenters here who did a fabulous job catching us up on where telehealth and teletherapy stands at this exact moment of time. 3 years, getting into 4 years past the start of the pandemic. So still going strong and lots of opportunities to improve, especially when it comes to equity and getting people the help they need through teletherapy. So thanks so much to you all. It was a pleasure hosting, and it was really, really nice to have all these attendees from all over the world. Thank you so much for attending. And you will lose access to the chat after this. So if there's anything that you want to save, please make sure to go back in there and save it now. I know we included a lot of links. We included links to the YouTube video about AAC and Boom Cards. We included links about our CEO, Mary's presentation on opportunities and risks associated with AI in education, Coviu's website, lots and lots of different things you can pull from there. So thank you so much for attending. And we'll see you all on YouTube when we post this. Have a great day, everyone.